This is a ManeHustle Media podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Jackie O and you're listening to Militantly Mixed.
Yo, this is Rashani from the Single Simulcast. And when I'm not making you laugh or making up parody songs, I'm kicking back, listening to Militantly Mixed.
Hey y'all, welcome to Militantly Mixed, the podcast about race and identity from the mixed race perspective. I am your host, Charmaine, aka MixedGirlMane, and I'm coming at you today from my parking garage in my apartment complex. This is episode 63. My husband is tutoring via Skype in one room. I have a friend from out of town visiting and is occupying my living room, and right now it's blasting TV hella loud. I've been trying to edit and do my job to keep the shows on track, but it's been very difficult with having so many people in such a small space. And I could not find a good time to record my intro, and then I finally recorded it last night, but the file was corrupted by the time I tried to edit this morning, so boo. Out of desperation, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to take my little recording device down to my car and see what happens. So you might hear people walking by or parking, but other than that, I think we're in a good spot. Hopefully. This is episode 63, and my guest this week is coming to us from Japan. Her name is Tiffany Toyoda. She is half Japanese, half Caucasian American. She grew up mostly here in the States when she was a kid, but she spent a little bit of time in Japan when she was little as well. But now she's been living in Japan for the last 13 years. We got to chat about what it's like for mixed folks in Japan right now, which is actually a lot different than I expected. I've only really ever heard a lot of negative things with very few positive things from movies I've seen or the media, documentaries, things like that. She has a totally different experience living there, primarily pretty reasonable and easy. But there's only a few times in which she has to kind of overprove her identity because of situations where they hear her and they hear Japanese person, but they see her and they see mixed person, and it's confusing for them as a culture. So we get into that. It was a great conversation. I can't wait to share it with you. I do have a little bit of news, though, to cover before we go to the episode. First bit of news, and this is a big one. We hit the $200 goal for September. So actually we exceeded it. We're at $203 for the end of September, which is amazing. I started out a couple months ago, back in July, talking about setting goals to add an additional $100 worth of sponsorship to the show. Not really hoping to cap out at $500 a month, but hoping to at least hit a minimum of $500 a month at the end of the year. So I started in August, and we hit $100 in August, and in September we bumped it up to $200, and we hit $200 as of September 20th, which is amazing. I want to do my shout outs right now. So thanks to my friend Shay. She actually came through with a $50 monthly donation to help push us up over $200. She and I have met each other back in film school, back in 2002, 2003. And we've been friends ever since. And she is a huge supporter of all the stuff I'm doing. Like, no joke. She supports everything I'm doing. She's also out there as a street team. She's got stickers for the shows, and she's posting them around town, and she's wearing Militantly Mixed t-shirts and fighting with people who try to tell her that she shouldn't be wearing the shirt. She is one of my dopest friends, and I'm so glad that she's out there supporting everything that I'm doing, and then also sponsoring the show. Like, Shay, thank you so much. I can't even deal with how grateful I am to you and everything that I owe you. I love you so much. I want to give out another shout out to Christian. She came through with a $30 a month donation this month, which is amazing. And that also really helped kick it getting closer to the $200 mark. So I really appreciate that as well. Thank you, Christian. And thank you also to Evelyn and Natalia for coming through at the $5 mark. This is just the growth that the show has had in the last couple months has been amazing. Even when I took the mental health break, the downloads were staying pretty steady. A lot of new people were downloading the show and kind of going backtracking and everything like that. So all of that has been so great to see that much growth. And now with the new sponsorship, there's so much more that I can do. After I catch up on paying off all of the things that I do, all of the annual fees and the software and everything like that, the money that's left over will really go towards helping to push the show advertising it and things like that and trying to get more ears on it. And that way, hopefully, we can also, connect and partner with some bigger organizations that are doing good work for mixed race people out there. So I appreciate it and help keep us going. The next goal for October is $300 a month, and we're already on our way there with our current amount being $203. So only $97 more to go in the month of October, and October isn't even here yet. So let's keep it going. I really, really appreciate the support. If you would like to support the show on a monthly basis, you can go to patreon.com/militantlymixed. And you can donate as low as $1 to as high as anything you wish. I did recently update the reward tiers, so there's new things at different levels. Some of the rewards kick in right away, like the shout-outs and the pins and the postcards and things like that. The t-shirts do kick in after 3 months of sponsorship. That's when the t-shirts kick in. So if you want to sponsor us that way, patreon.com/militantlymixed. If you don't want to commit to a monthly donation, but you do want to support the show financially, you can go to paypal.me/militantlymixed. Donations there also go directly into the ManeHustle Media account, and it goes a long way in helping us improve things. So 2 ways to donate: patreon.com/militantlymixed or paypal.me/militantlymixed, and both those things will go a long way to help supporting the show. This is more of a shout out, I guess, or a pitch for y'all to listen to another show. I was a guest over the summer. I recorded an interview as a guest for Motivation for Black People with Justin Michael Williams. Justin and I actually met by chance a couple years ago at a lunch. And I say it in the recording. I was like, I didn't remember anything about him besides that at that lunch I met this mix guy. And then a couple months ago, we ran into each other again at a Black Podcasters event. And once we realized we knew each other, we started chatting, and he invited me to be a guest on his show, Motivation for Black People. This show is an amazing show, and he's spoken to some people that I cannot believe I am now in the company of as a guest on this show. He has done some great work with his show. It's so awesome. And it basically focuses in on the Black experience and Black people out there doing things, big things. And while he is biracial, he is Black and Persian, he has yet to cover mixedness on his show. So when we started talking about it, we really got into the ideas of colorism and, being enough of any particular race, things like that. And it was an amazing conversation. I'm actually really, really proud of my part in that interview as a guest. Also, this was the first time I got to interview face to face with somebody as a guest, and the experience was really great. I mean, the emotional connection between us while we were talking was amazing. It is such a good show. So please go check out Motivation for Black People. The episode is called Dark Skin versus Light Skin, the struggles with being mixed-ish. And I was the guest on that show. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. I really do want you to check it out. It is a great podcast. Don't just check out my episode, check out other episodes as well. But I'm really proud of that interview. All right, I feel like I have another announcement of some sort. Let's see. Motivation for Black People. Patreon hit the goal. Did my shout outs. That might be it. I feel like I'm rambling because I also feel very awkward being in my car while people are walking past me, looking at me, holding a microphone and speaking into the void. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. And without further ado, please help me welcome Tiffany Toyoda to Militantly Mixed. All right, and so we are back, and my guest today is Tiffany Toyoda. And why don't you introduce yourself and let's get into it.
Sure. My name is Tiffany Toyoda. Half Japanese and half, I guess you say, white Caucasian. I've been outside of the States for 13 years now. I've been in Japan. So I'm honestly not up to date with the American lingo these days.
Oh.
I've been raised by my Japanese mother, as well as my Japanese stepdad. And I haven't seen my birth dad since I was about 8 years old. So, yeah, I've kind of never really had like a quote unquote American family in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And both of my parents, my Japanese parents, they met in the stateside, and they weren't really trying to immigrate to the US permanently either. So I guess you'd say they're more of the expat type that always wanted to move back to Japan. That's exactly what they did.
Mm. And so even though technically mixed race and you did spend some time in the States, you're really more of a Japanese because you got Japanese parents and you lived in Japan a big portion of your life, yeah?
Yeah, but then again, I still lived in the States like 18
Yeah.
years, so it's most of my life I've been in the States.
Oh, 18 years. Okay, I thought it was
Yeah.
just a little bit.
No, it's 18 years, and all of my education, like school stuff, has 90% been English in the States. So in that sense, I'm American. Then when it comes to like food, yeah.
Do you feel like you get out of practice with English because you don't use it as often in Japan where you're at now, or?
Oh no, I've never used more English and Japanese at the same time in my life since I moved back to Japan.
Oh.
Because like I've been surrounded by bilinguals. Even my husband, he speaks English fluently, so our conversation's usually like a mismatch of two languages. Oh, do you want me to tell you how I found you?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Yeah, because I like hearing other people's stories of how they found your podcast.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. So one day, like a few months ago, I was thinking about making my own podcast, actually. I was like, okay, well, first of all,
oh, cool.
Let's see if this like mixed race podcast thing is actually a thing, right?
But even if it's not, you still got to make it a thing, so.
Yeah. But then I thought, well, there has to be at least one human being out there that has such thing, right? I mean, there's like only a bajillion podcasts out there.
Right.
So I was on like the Apple podcast, like searching mixed race, multi-race, half Japanese, hafu, all that. And I hit a few podcasts, and yours was one of them. It's like, okay, subscribe.
Awesome.
So that's how I found your podcast, and I listened to a few of them and realized you were also on Instagram. So then I started stalking you on Instagram.
Stalking, I love it.
And then you mentioned on one of your episodes you're looking for people to talk to, and I raised my hand. So here we are.
Yeah. No, I like knowing how people find it too for a couple things. One is I think it proves, like, if people can hear how often someone says, well, it was late at night and I was trying to feel connected to my community and I Googled mixed race or something like that, you hear a version of that. That I feel like shows people like, yes, we are absolutely trying to find a community, but there's just not like a centralized place, really established place for us. And because we're so mixed so differently across the board, we don't necessarily think we would automatically be a joined community, but I think there are ways in which we could. Obviously, for me, being mixed Japanese, I do get really excited when I find other mixed Japanese because I know that that's a very specific part of mixedness that, I'm just not walking around running into other mixed Japanese, and getting to have that conversation. It's more often that I'll find a mixed black person like my other side. So, I definitely feel connected there, but I don't often get to feel connected to other Japanese. So I always get excited when there's another Japanese. But did you discover hafu and like Japanese mixed things when you were looking?
No. I mean, there was a few Instagram pages, but nothing that was specifically for mixed race Japanais.
I think you got to do it then.
I know, right?
You got to do it, and you can do it in both languages, so that you hit all the people, and I think it'll be amazing.
Yeah, I was also thinking that too, because not all mixed race Japanese people speak English. That's like another thing.
Right.
There's some people that only speak Japanese that totally grew up here and they're basically Japanese.
Yeah. Well, I fully support you, and if you do it, which I hope you do, I will subscribe, and hopefully it'll improve my Japanese if you do speak Japanese during.
We'll see how it turns out.
Right.
I mean, it's like a kind of an idea coming out of the box at the moment.
Right. I mean, same with me. I thought about Militantly Mixed for years, and it was kind of born out of a conversation with a fellow mixed friend of mine who I now host my other show, Blurred Comics, with, and we just couldn't figure out a schedule to make it work. And then also, you just doubt yourself. You don't think, like, why would anybody listen to me? And you got the imposter syndrome and all that stuff happens. And then one day, everything lined up where it was like, if I don't do it now, I'm not probably ever going to do it. And I started it, and my first couple weeks, I think I had like 11 people listen, which were probably all friends and family. Well, probably just all friends. And but I felt good to know that, like, to see those numbers pop up. And now that I've been doing it for over a year, connecting to people all over the world. Obviously, you're talking to me from Japan right now. I'm sitting in my teeny tiny little Los Angeles apartment, you know, sweating because it's hot as hell and and stuff. And it's just like, it's awesome to be able to do this. And more than that, like, I've already, just from our conversations both through Instagram and when we spoke a couple days ago, I just feel like that's just one more connection that I was missing that I needed. Like, you're a puzzle piece that has fit into my experience now, and I love it and I appreciate it. So I'm excited for us to finally get to have this convo.
Now I feel very special.
So what, when you were deciding to reach out to me anyway, I mean, not just because I put the plea out, like, what is the stuff in mixedness that you want to talk about or even need to talk about? Like, what was your hope?
Well, when I was like really small, I always had this idea that one day, right, like I can't be the only mixed race person in the entire world. Like,
Right.
that's just, I knew that as a small child, like in my single digits. But then I had no idea what to do about it. And I thought, like, one day when I become an adult, like, someone's gonna like already come and fix this by now. And here I am, like 30 years later, and nothing has really been fixed.
I know, right?
Yeah. And for me, there was a few kickers, but one of them was I was having a conversation with my mom a while ago, and she was nagging me to renew my U.S. passport because I haven't, and it was about to expire. And she was saying like, "Oh, well, you're like actually American, so you need to do this, la-di-da." And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I'll just go to the embassy. But then it's just realizing that like your own mother is not able to tell you how to navigate world as the race that you are. And there's a lot of people that, I mean, the mixed race population is growing, and there's a lot more people who don't know how to deal with it. And the mixed race parents, they'll probably be able to handle it a lot better than a single race parent, right? Because personal experience. So
I mean, it's kind of a mixed thing because both of my parents are biracial, and both of them, neither of them really prepared me for like what people's reactions to me were. It was basically just like every time someone pointed out something, then my parents would be like, you know, you're special because you're these things. And it was like, great, I'm special. What do I do with that? You know, like, where do I go from there? Whereas I think now, you know, I was born in the 70s. So in their case, they were barely legally able to be mixed here in the United States. You know, there was anti-interracial couple laws and stuff like that out here. So they didn't really know to talk about it, or at least they were raised by people, the generation that was told not to talk about things. So they didn't talk about things. And so by the time I come around starting to ask questions, because I come from a generation that is more talkative, they're like, yeah, sure, fine, you're mixed. You know, go out in the world and be somebody. So I hope now that we're starting to be more vocal and we're trying to reach out to community, that we actually do have biracial parents and or monoracial parents in interracial relationships that are actively trying to figure out, how do I raise this little mixed kid, you know? But to your point though, the thing about your own mother can't talk about, you know, half of you, what your ethnic experiences is like. It's a thing. And I don't even know how we're supposed to talk about that either.
And I feel like it's something that you're kind of quote unquote not supposed to talk about because it makes some mothers uncomfortable because they have mixed race kids.
Right.
But then you got to deal with it somehow.
Yeah. And the biggest thing for me, I think, was that it would have been nice to feel normal sometimes. And I was always kind of reminded I wasn't normal. That's not how I feel now, but that's how I felt then. Did you have stuff like that growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I knew I was not normal, but then I was a very absorbed child who thought like everybody is stupid. Like the entire world is stupid.
I'm the lucky one. I'm the only one.
So like, for example, first grade, I was put in ESL class because the teachers didn't think I spoke English. And I looked very white. But because I was a very untalkative child, I didn't speak to anybody I really didn't know. And I didn't speak up when I thought the other person is stupid either. So they threw me in ESL. But it worked out great for me because there was a smaller group of people.
Right.
Yeah. Like as a child, I really didn't like dealing with like 20, 30 people at once. So like 1, 2 other people was easy, but not 20.
Right. I get that too. I was also stuck in it just because I had a British nana on my dad's side and a Japanese grandmother on my mother's side, and I spent a lot of time with them when I was little. So by the time I got around to kindergarten, no one understood me. I sounded like I spoke broken Japanese with a British accent. Like it's like I'm telling people I'm speaking English, but they can't tell that I'm speaking English. Did you?
I wish there was like a recording of this. It'll be hilarious.
I would love it. That's the one thing I like. I would love it. Did you? How long were you in ESL before they figured out you were actually speaking English?
I think in third grade they moved me out.
Okay.
But then, yeah, I had another challenge in life where at the end of third grade in the States, I moved to Japan in Okinawa, where my mom's from, and I was put into normal public school there without knowing how to read or write.
Oh.
Yeah. So they're like, okay, well, because putting you in third grade sounds like a really horrible idea, we're going to put you in second grade.
Oh.
So and then you don't have to there's not much of a gap in language abilities. But then the 2-3 months, I think, of a few months of second grade, I really couldn't follow a class because I did not know how to read the textbooks.
Right.
So in Japan, the new school year starts in April, not September, like in the States.
Oh.
So, yeah, the new school year starts in April. So the holiday you have between grades is 2 weeks. It's spring break. So during spring break, my stepdad, had me sit down, plant my ass down in the chair, and he crammed the first grade kanjis and the second grade kanjis all into my little brain in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
For the start of third grade. And I didn't go to the first day of third grade because I had a fever from studying too much.
So just already behind and then putting yourself just a little bit more. Did it pick up quick though once you got that? Did that?
Oh yeah, after the first day of my fever and it disappeared, from the second day of third grade, I was fine. I was able to follow along. So I guess it was necessary, but during that time, I hated studying.
I bet. But at least you get you're properly bilingual. You're not you struggle through one or whatever. You're pretty even across both languages because you've had access to them both at such a young age.
Yeah, and also I was forced to remember 200 kanjis in 2 weeks.
Right.
And back in the day where there was no YouTube and you wanted to watch Japanese TV in California, you went to these little video shops that had recorded Japanese TV and you rent them.
And they were all on VHS that was handwritten, hand lettered, or at least ours was. It was all hand lettered, so you knew it just came from somebody's living room.
Yep, exactly. So that's how I watched all the Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball, Doraemon, and that's how I learned my Japanese.
That's funny. See, I haven't actually talked to someone who used to get the videotapes before, so that's actually fun because that connects back to what I remember from my childhood as well.
Yeah, and you're only able to get those tapes if you're in an area with a lot of other Japanese people, like Southern California.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I'm very grateful that I was in Southern California because I got access to that in the early 90s.
There's
'80s.
hard to find the pockets of Japanese, because other Asians tend to stay within their communities, whereas Japanese tend to assimilate. And so when I was with my grandma, it would be Sacramento had a Japanese community. It was small, but they, there was a block of about, maybe 5-block radius where there was a lot of Japanese stores and things like that, restaurants and the video store and everything. And then of course you could go to the Bay Area, San Francisco or San Jose. And then the next spot wasn't until you got to LA. So yeah, if you couldn't get to one of those, that was it. That was all the Japanese you had access to.
Sounds about right.
Were you in LA? Were you
Well, I was born in Anaheim and slowly traveled more south, you could say.
Oh, okay.
And, I was in Gardena when I was a lot younger, and then Torrance, Redondo Beach area.
Okay. Oh, Gardena does have a Japanese community, right? I keep seeing they had a festival recently. Yeah, I haven't been out to their festival yet, but
I haven't been out there in I don't even know how long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now I live near the Sawtelle district of Los Angeles, which is the smaller version of, so there's Little Tokyo, which is on the east side of downtown, or it's like downtown Los Angeles or whatever, but I'm on the west side, and so it's a really tiny area, which I think is, I'm not thrilled about it, but I think they call it Little Osaka over here. But it's only like 3 blocks. It's just restaurants, 2 grocery stores, and like dessert shops, like like pastry shops and stuff like that. And
I'm interested in their choice of wording for Little Osaka.
Yeah, I don't know why. And funny thing is, it's never Japanese who say this to me. It's only non-Japanese LA folks. They're like, "Oh, you live by Little Osaka," and I'm like, "Yeah, I guess." You know, like I guess that's it. Yeah, I was like, eh. But yeah, but it's nice to be able to go to the grocery store, walk down to the grocery store and get, get my supplies that my grandma used to, like, basically once every couple months would send me a box when I lived in Austin or when I lived in Boston, and she would send me like a box of my mom and my grandma stuff. Now I don't have to worry about that because I can just walk. So that's a nice thing. But I still don't have a connection. Like I don't have like a Japanese group of friends or mixed Japanese or anything like that. I really don't have that connection. So that's where the show comes in. That's how I find him. So what is it like though for hafus in Japan right now? I know with what the US gets to see, it's usually if something prominent happens, like when the beauty queen was half black and half Japanese, we got to hear about it over here. Or we get to sometimes see news about, like, there's an explosion of mixed race Japanese and they don't know what to do about it or whatever. But when we were talking the other day, it doesn't seem to be as big of a deal as it seems to be from the media here when we're in the US looking over there.
Yeah, I think the US likes to make a big deal out of Japan not becoming like a one race country.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But then, I don't know. And also another thing is Japanese people in general are more quiet and reserved than Americans.
Yeah.
So I remember on the news, they were talking about the beauty queen Ariana Miyamoto. I think Miyamoto was her name. They were just mentioning like, this is Miss Japan, next topic, kind of thing.
Really?
But, yeah, the internet went a little wild, saying like, quote unquote, she's not Japanese enough, blah, blah, blah.
That's how we got to see it, because I'm also a member of like some social groups online, Facebook and stuff, Japanese American groups, and basically you would even see it there, whereas like, she's not Japanese enough, she's not representative of Japan, she doesn't look like us, her Japanese doesn't sound good, and it's like, she actually doesn't even speak English from what I understand. She's born and raised there.
She barely speaks.
So yeah, so I that's how I saw it presented.
Yeah, but the TV media, they won't say something like that. But the people, they'll say it. So it's all over social media.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. So just like if it was the Japanese equivalent to our CNN here, it would just be like news update. There's a hafu beauty queen for Japan.
Yeah, they'll say like her. I'm not sure which one of her parents was Japanese, but for example, like the mom is Japanese and the father is African American or from Ghana or from the Philippines or something. So there'll always be an introduction of what nationality the parents are. If the person obviously does not look very Japanese, traditional Japanese, I should say. But then there was no more comments further than that. And then the internet always gets wild with trolls and weird comments. And people say this stuff, but they would probably not say it to your face if you're standing in front of them.
Okay, so that is, I guess, probably the different experience between what I experience as a mixed Japanese here stateside and what you experience as a mixed Japanese in Japan. Because I actually get told by Japanese people here that, oh, you're not Japanese, though, when I explain.
Yeah, I get that, too.
You do get it? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I do get it, too. But it's not like, oh, why are you representing Japan when you're not Japanese enough? It's not something I get told because it's not like I'm representing Japan.
Okay, that's right. Right. You said that the other day where it was just like, it's fine to be mixed until you're trying to be until you're trying to represent Japan.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
That's when some people have problems.
Right.
And the country is just going to have to get used to it because I think there was a statistic that says like by 2030, the mixed race population in Japan is going to increase to 10%. And right now it's at 3%.
Oh, okay.
So the country is changing and the older generation and the conservative people are going to have to adapt.
Right, because even just like for the last 10 years or so, we've been hearing that, Japan's going to run out of people because no one's having babies anymore. And then the people who are having babies are having mixed babies. And so Japan's not going to be Japan anymore. Basically.
Well, it depends on what you qualify as Japanese-ness.
Right. And I want to say, like, even though, yeah, I didn't grow up in Japan or anything, my cultural connection to Japan is my Japanese grandma inside her house. So obviously I can't represent for Japan, but I'm excited to be a part of I want to be a part or accepted part of the culture. If I were to go there, I would want people to see, like, yeah, sure, you're Japanese too. You're just not, like, I'm an American, I get it, that kind of thing. But I don't want someone to take my Japanese-ness away, as if I've had no access to the culture. That hurts a bit when that happens.
Well, I don't want to be too political or anything, but the good news is you don't get shot here for the color of your skin.
Well, there's that.
So in that terms, it's easier to live here.
Right. So in day-to-day, though, just because I'm, I only have my view from what I see in news and media and things like that. Like, you basically just walk around all day and you're just fine. You're not necessarily outcasted or anything like that. It's just that you did talk about struggling a little bit when they see you in person for an appointment and you have to prove who you are versus like hearing you on the phone.
Yeah. I mean, yes, that's true because my Japanese name is Toyoda. So on paper, I'm completely Japanese. And then I show up. So people have a hard time registering that somebody that could look like a white person could have a very Japanese name. But people are getting used to that too. Like when I first moved here in 2006, I had people like flip out. And also probably because my Japanese wasn't that great back then. Yeah, but now there's more people that don't bat an eyelash, which is kind of refreshing to see.
Yeah, it's nice to sometimes it's nice not to be noticed, even though there's times when we really want to be noticed for all the things that we are. But culturally, I assume you feel more Japanese since you didn't have as much access to, well, I mean, you grew up in the States, but in terms of your biological father's side, you don't necessarily have access to whatever his white culture was. Is that
Not
true?
really. Up until like 8 years old, I used to go to his house every weekend. But it was weekend, and all I really remember as a child was barbecues. And there was a countdown to noon because nobody was allowed to drink beer before noon, or else you'd become an alcoholic. That was like the family rule. And there was these salads with huge chunks of onions, like huge chunks of onions. And I really hated onions.
I don't like onions either.
And other than that, it was like delivery pizza.
So, like, culturally, like, white American, not necessarily like, oh, I'm of Scot ancestry or British ancestry or English or something like that. Just straight up, just a white American. That's pretty much.
I don't remember him like putting forth the European side like full force. Yeah, then they might have, but I might have just not noticed.
Right. So, but culturally, where do you place yourself?
Right in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've kind of gotten comfortable at the idea of I'm not going to be completely either, which is fine. It's just how I am. But then, like, I've recently realized, like, following a few, like, Asian meme accounts on Instagram and, like, episodes of, like, childhood stuff. I'm like, oh, that's me. So, in that sense, I guess you could say, like, I would consider myself Asian American.
Right.
Because I understand that culture a lot.
There's definitely times when, like, something really benign, like, I was out at somebody's house the other day and they asked me for they had asked me for business cards, and I pulled them out of my backpack in a sandwich bag, a zipper sandwich bag. And then I pulled them out and I handed it over. And they looked at me and I was like, oh, yeah, that's a Japanese thing. Like, my grandma always had stuff in sandwich bags to, like, divide so that things didn't get dirty in your bag.
And they're easy to find because they're see-through. Yeah,
they're see-through and they're all together. So I could separate that business card sandwich bag from the buttons sandwich bag that was also in the purse.
You have a thing of buttons in your bag?
Oh, because of my shows. So I have like my militantly mixed buttons in case I'm, talking to somebody about the show, and then I'll hand them a button. Yeah, like a pin. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, like a pin. Or then I also have, for my other show, Blurred Comics, I also have buttons now too. So yeah, everything's in zipper bags.
Not like your shirt buttons.
No, not like your shirt buttons. And then also the other day, like I washed what I feel was a perfectly good piece of tinfoil. I washed it and then I like laid it over a Tupperware to dry. And I just looked at it and it was like, I don't know. I remember my grandmother doing that. I have never done that. And then out of nowhere at 41 years old, I decided to wash a piece of tinfoil to make sure I could reuse it. And I was like, this is stuff like I know this was my grandma coming out of me because I remember watching her do stuff like that. And then, I can't tell if it's just my grandma or if it's a Japanese thing or whatever, but I know other Japanese who, like, if you've got butter Tupperware filled with anything else in your refrigerator, like it'll look like a butter on the outside, but on the inside it's noodles or it's something left over, or it's a sewing kit, like your cookie tins or a sewing kit, things like that. Like that kind of stuff starts to make me feel like, oh, I do actually have something like other Japanese
empty
people.
Cookie container being a sewing kit. I thought that was normal. Like, what else are you supposed to do with an empty cookie can?
I mean, to be fair, I think a lot of other cultures do this because my black side, they do it also. But I don't know white kids, like white Americans, to have done that, So I think, like, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think it's pretty likely that, like, anybody yellow or brown would do it. Because I know Filipinos do. I know some Filipino friends that did it. I know other Asian folks that did it. I know from California, I know Mexican folks who did it, and I know black folks who did it in my family, but I never, like, white people who I've known who've seen this meme pop up online about, like, the cookie tins or the butter dishes, they didn't do that.
Maybe because most of them were able to afford the actual Tupperware.
Maybe. And we're just real practical. We try to reuse whatever we can. Like, we've already been really green accidentally, we've always preserved things. We hand me down clothes or anything like that. Like, we kept that stuff going forever, and I can't tell if that's a poverty thing or if that was a cultural thing. It just never seemed to be this thing that the white kids that I knew did.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, like, I never realized that there are some people in the world that do not use empty tin cans for sewing kits until, like, a few months ago.
Yeah.
And another thing that I've realized within the last few years that's very Asian is fighting over the bill. I thought that was a normal adult thing to do. Fight over the bill.
Definitely, especially on the Japanese side. I mean, I think other Asians do this, but I know for a fact no one on my white side does this, and no one on my black side did this. It was only the Japanese side that did this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I didn't realize that until very recently.
Did you also have the family do the thing where they would, like, if they lost the fight in the restaurant, you would find a $20 bill or something somewhere in your house?
Oh yeah, that kind of stuff happens too.
Yeah,
or like or one of your kids randomly get okozukai, which is
I was like, wait, it's not graduation, it's not birthday, it's not a holiday, what's happening?
And then, like, the person giving it to you, usually like an auntie or a grandma, will be like, shh, keep it a secret from your mother.
Yeah.
But then, of course, like, mom eventually finds out, right?
Right. Like, where you get all that candy from? I don't know. My favorite thing was finding inside the VHS covers, like me and my brother waking up on Saturday because my mom has to work or whatever, and we'd pull out a videotape. If mom wasn't home to see it, we kept that money. We didn't tell anybody. But sometimes my mom was there and she would see it and she'd be like, oh, and she'd have to try to figure out what family member did it. But I definitely took that on. I have mastered the art of either calling the restaurant ahead now if my cousins come into town and we're going to meet somewhere. I call the restaurant ahead and give them my information, or because the bathroom trick doesn't work anymore. You can't say, oh, I'm going to go to the bathroom, because that means everybody's going to run to the waiter. So you got to do it like before, show up to the restaurant an hour before and be like, okay, this is the table, here's the card, don't let anybody pay you, it's got to be me. And then you end up hating, then you're like in an actual fight with your family.
Yeah.
And then they're not going to talk to you.
I thought those fights were a normal occasion.
Yeah.
Family gatherings.
That's just us. Yeah, that is just, from as far as I know, that is just the Japanese, because it was real deal.
Or like, even do that with friends. Like if you know, for example, if you got a job before your friend did,
right,
and you already got your first paycheck, you'll pay for your friend's food too.
Right.
Not bat an eyelash.
I'm really trying, now that I'm older, I'm trying to put it in my mind this way. If I'm with an American friend and they offer to pay, I will fight it, but I will try to concede eventually and try to make sure it doesn't bother me. But I know it'll bother me, and then a couple days later I can't deal with it, and I'm like, no, I gotta even this out. But I try to. Or it'll be funny too, because it's years and years of me buying food and whatever for friends, and then the one time they're trying to do something and they're like, but you always get me, and I don't have a response for that one.
Well, that's when you're supposed to say gracefully thank you.
See, that's tough though, because we've been
tough. I'm learning.
It's like in our heads since our childhood, you have to fight or it's you're bad or something, In my case, it's always like the threat that you're dishonoring the ancestors. And so like, I'm not even a person that believes in any, like I don't believe in any kind of God or ghosts or any of that kind of stuff. But when a family member would say like, you're disappointing the ancestors, suddenly I couldn't do any, I had to, whatever I got to do not to disappoint the ancestors.
I have never put my ancestors on as a child.
You didn't get that one? Man, I got that one.
No,
that's mean. Disappointment, I think in Japanese families, disappointment is like the best way to discipline your children. Like, you don't have to spank me. You don't have to do anything like that. But you tell me you're disappointed in me and you wreck my world.
Yeah. Then again, in the family, my mom has always been the most disappointing. And there's no way I could top that one off.
Okay. So how was the extended family? Was there obvious things to you as a child with you being mixed, or was it less obvious to you because you were the kid, but you knew it was happening to your mom?
Well, there was this one point that I realized that mix and speak more than one language. And it was when I went to the doctor's office in California, and it was a Japanese American doctor. She did not speak a lick of Japanese. And I was probably like 3 or 4, maybe 4. And she was talking to me in English, and I responded with a mishmash of English and Japanese, as I usually do. And my mom was like, oh, you need to speak English to the teacher. She only speaks English. And I was like, Mommy, what's English?
Oh, funny.
So that was kind of it's a memory that I have that kind of defined like, oh, okay, I speak more than one thing. It's actually 2 separate things. And there's a group of people who knows this thing called English, and there's a group of people who know this thing called Japanese.
And how did you figure out how to differentiate them from that point?
Well, it's because I've been always been a very observing kind of person. I'll take notice. So, like watching TV shows, for example, there's no bilingual television back in the day.
Yeah, that's true.
Or so watching my parents like talk to other people, like, oh, okay, so this thing is English and these people talk it. And this Japanese thing seems to be only with my parents and my parents' friends, or sometimes at the grocery store, or when we fly back home to go see the extended family.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about what would it be like to figure out you were actually speaking 2 languages.
Yeah, so for me, that was like the biggest shock factor, besides like realizing that I'm mixed, because it's very obvious that there's 2 Japanese people at home and I don't look like them.
Well, see, that's weird that you say that, because to me, and this happens to me all the time when I'm talking to folks on the show, is like, to me, you look like both Japanese and white. And yet to me, and yet you keep saying I look white, and I don't see a white person. I see a person very similar to the women in my family, my mom and her sisters, which are half and half. So they kind of look Japanese, they kind of look white. I wouldn't accuse them of being one or the other, though. You know, like, I would have to say you're mixed with something because you don't look like Japanese, you don't look like white, but you look like both.
So that's like where that's the entire mixed existence.
Yeah.
But then the reality right now is we kind of still live in a world where people like to categorize things, and people's heritage and racial backgrounds is still within one of those.
Still important to people, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's changing, but then it's still not really up to par as how I like it to be.
Right. Like, I feel like even though it is changing, the way that it's changing here, at least, I don't know if it's the same for you, is that now people are more vocal about it. Where people do actually come up and ask, where are you from? What are you? Versus kind of like, you don't... I feel like I get it a lot more now than I did when I was younger, even though I've always gotten the question. You know? So people feel like, as a way of being more inclusive, they actually will just be bolder about asking. And
I'm not sure if it works.
And it's really backwards, working. Like, it's not working for me, but for whatever reason, you seem to think that that's how you include me into your world. You know, it's a strange thing. But for you, like, so when people see you, do they react to you like they think you're white?
Well, when I'm in the States, mostly, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. But then they'll be like, oh, but I think you're, like, kind of mixed. And
really?
I'm like, what? Do I have, like, smaller eyes or something? And they're like, yeah.
Huh.
So if I may put them in the spot and make them kind of uncomfortable about it, then they'll like admit it.
But in Japan, they'll just ask you to like prove who you are, but they won't necessarily point it out that it's because you...
Well, because in the States, there's like usually a section where you have to specify your eye color and your race, right?
Yeah.
In Japan, there isn't.
Right.
You don't have to specify your eye color and the color of your skin because mostly Japanese people, there's like no point in doing it.
Yeah.
So they don't really ask in that sense. And also if for example, if the ward office really wants to look it up, there's this thing in Japan called the koseki, and it's your family records. And on my family record, it says my birth dad is in katakana, so it's like the foreign language for in Japan. So it's obviously not somebody who's Japanese. Okay. And it says where I'm born. So if they really want to look it up, they could.
Right.
But it's not like any paperwork would be different because they did that anyway.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, you're a Japanese citizen, and you have been there for so many years, so the only thing is just that when they look at you, you happen to not quite look like everybody else.
Yeah. Also, I do get quite a number of comments asking if I'm Russian.
See, that actually does make sense to me because there are segments of Russia that are so close to Japan that the people kind of look like they're mixed, but they're not. Like, actually, I watch a lot of boxing. And there's a lot of boxers that come from like Siberia and stuff like that actually kind of look Japanese to me too. And I'm like, I bet you they are as close to Japan as they can get in Russia because of the way their faces. So yeah, I guess that makes sense because you are a lighter skin even for, you know, how pale Japanese can be. You are a lighter skinned person, but it's just weird. I know it must be that my eye is different because I am mixed and I've been around mixed people, you know, my mixed family on both sides. So I'm looking for mixed, really.
Yeah, the mixed people have what I call the Hafu radar.
Yeah.
And you're able to tell from a herd of people, like, that person's like, mixed, that person's mixed.
Oh my goodness. I used to be so excited. I had the biggest crush on a boy that worked at the Japanese grocery store when I was when I was like a teenager. His name was Kaio, but he was a Hafu and he worked in the tofu section. And I remember just being excited every Saturday, you know, oh, I'll get the tofu, grandma, you know, because I want. But it was not just that. I don't think it, like, I couldn't tell you what the boy looked like now, but I think it was just because it was like another mixed face. And I was so excited to see someone like that, you know, that I could feel connected to or whatever, that it would give me the excuse to go and stare at the hafu boy back there. But it is like you're in a crowd of other people and you're just like, I see one, I see one, I see one. The only problem I think when we're looking at mixed faces is that because we're mixed and we don't take on all the characteristics of our ethnicities, sometimes we misjudge. Like, it's really hard for me to distinguish most mixed white and like South Asian or Southeast Asians. I can't differentiate a half white and half Chinese mixed person from a half white and half Korean mixed person. If they don't get the eye shape, they kind of resemble to me. Whereas I feel like I can always identify a half Japanese, but I could be completely wrong. Like, I don't know. I just feel like I want to say like, oh yes, I can identify them because I'm mixed and I have an eye for it. But but I don't know if I really do.
Yeah, there's some challenging ones.
Yeah. Because even every now and then a Korean person will look kind of Japanese and it'll be like, ugh, I'm not sure.
Well, and also, like, when you trace it all back, we're all the same.
We had to come from somewhere the same, yeah.
And we all come from the same area, so.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, all in all, like, what do you feel as a mixed woman in Japan? Like, what is your overall feel for how you live? Like, how do you feel? I don't even know how to ask the question, because I like, just talking to you, I realize how skewed my view of what it's like for mixed Japanese in Japan. I've always ever heard it as it's like a really rough thing for you guys. And then I talk to you and you're like, most of the time people don't even pay attention unless this and this. And it's just so different from what I've heard. And then also my experience as like a mixed American Japanese is a totally different thing too.
I will say that it's a lot easier being a mixed adult in Japan than a mixed child in Japan.
Oh, really?
And being closer to Tokyo, there's a lot more foreigners and therefore a lot more mixed kids or mixed people in general. So it's not just mixed kids, but mixed people our age.
Right.
Yeah, that are walking around being fully normal adults contributing to society. But if you grew up in Japan as a mixed person, not in the center of the city, and probably went to a public school, it's a very, very different experience. Like when I went to public school in Okinawa, I had a really hard time, to be very honest. It was just because I look different, you're an automatic target for everything.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
so
that seems to be more what makes it over here of how you hear.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, and kids are brutal.
Yeah, they are. Kids are such.
Kids are mean and kids are brutal. So they'll say everything that comes up at the top of their head without thinking twice of how it affects the other person.
Were there any other Hafu kids with you?
No, I was the first person that went to that school that was not like pure Okinawan.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm. And also it was very normal to have these Japanese style like hole in the ground toilets in elementary school, and I'd never used one in my life, so but all the toilets were like that. So I was like only kid allowed to use the faculty toilet, which had the one Western toilet in it. Then again, I of course stand up, right?
Right.
Because I had to go like all the way downstairs to the first floor, and it was like a very far end. So schooling in Japan was very tough.
Right. I'm kind of surprised to hear that you were the only, because I told you a little bit that I kind of have been to things about the war bride movements, the U.S. war brides and stuff, and hearing how much that happened in Okinawa and how many families were, born out of the base, basically. I thought Okinawa actually just like had a whole bunch of mixed people wandering around.
There is a whole bunch of mixed people walking around. It's just if you're closer to the base or closer to the main city, then there will be a lot of those type of people. But then I wasn't in that area.
You weren't in that part of town.
Further away, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's why. But if you were, or if you went to school on base, it's a completely different experience.
But in general, like, are you fairly happy in Japan? Like,
I moved here in 2006 thinking I'll become more Japanese, and in 2 years I'll move back to California, and I never did. 15 years later, and there's no plans to move back so far, so yeah.
No, I think I would like to spend some time out there to to feel more Japanese or to learn to be more Japanese, I guess, given, my very distilled version of Japanese culture from my growing up. But it's nice to speak to someone who has that experience and actually could probably flow between the two countries fairly easily. I mean, like you said, you're not really up on American slang anymore or anything like that, and that kind of stuff would probably make you stand out a little bit, but over time you would assimilate back into the culture fairly easy in both cases.
Yeah, like I never really was a TV person, so
okay.
All these latest TV shows talks I don't really get, and we don't have Netflix either. So
you don't, or Japan doesn't?
Japan has Netflix.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. I think they got it a few years ago. I'm not sure, but we in our house
do not have
Netflix. We do not have Amazon Prime, and we do not have Hulu.
Okay.
And we are one of the rare ones in that sense.
This is not your thing, so.
Yeah, too much. Like TV in general is very loud, right? There's just images and sounds, and it's just honestly too much.
Yeah.
Too much information.
All right. Well, we are coming close to the end. I would like to close out with asking, what do you love most about being mixed?
I actually thought about this one, and the first thing that came to my mind was the ability to be native in more than one language and culture.
Oh, I haven't gotten that yet. That's cool.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't gotten an answer close to that yet. That's awesome.
Yeah, because like when I'm here in Japan, it feels like home, but then there's something missing. But then when I go back to the States, it feels like home, but there's something missing.
Right.
And when it comes to when I was growing up in the States, my stepdad, he likes the 60s and my mom likes the 80s. So they took in between and listened to the 70s all the time in the house. So I grew up listening to the 70s music.
Nice. It's some good music from the 70s. I mean, there's some dodgy music too, but
I mean, there's dodgy music in any culture around the world.
Right.
So in that terms, like I guess you could say that I'm very American because I don't know the artist or the song titles, but I'll know almost every song that will come on the radio on the oldies channel.
Yeah. Militantly Mixed is a ManeHustle media podcast, produced and hosted by me, Charmaine Fury. Music is by David Bogan the One. You can follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Militantly Mixed. If you'd like to become a sponsor of Militantly Mixed, please go to patreon.com/militantlymixed for monthly sponsorship or paypal.me/militantlymixed for a one-time only donation. And if you like what you hear on Militantly Mixed, please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to be your mixed-ass self.
ManeHustle Media. Turn your side hustle into your main hustle.